The Football Show
on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more live on Sky Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along to the Football Show, where with 77 minutes on the clock, Leicester are 2-0 up against Spurs, and Manchester United with 45 minutes on the clock. Second half has just started. They are 0-0 at the Brentford Community Stadium. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent is here in the studio. Dan, great to see you in person.
Joe, yeah, we do this all the time, don't we? You know,
let's never take it for granted again.
I mean, it's looking good, isn't it? That there's a COVID update for the evening completed.
Finished.
Well, there might be fans in stadiums though over the next month, which is very good. You know,
it seems so. Yeah. We're headed that way. The 5th of February is Ireland-Wales. Would be expecting capacity, I think.
Well, it's probably less people watching you on telly. Or is that one of your games? I can't keep up with all these announcements.
No, that'll be RTE, Jackie Hurley.
Oh yeah. I believe you're working together today. I see. Yeah.
I mean,
it's like seeing like the
people who were
like
there,
Live Aid or something, like it's all the stars coming together.
People who were there said they hadn't seen broadcasting chemistry like it.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean,
listen.
I mean, just fate has kept you apart for so long, and all of a sudden these broadcasting minds collide.
Correct. Yeah. We're going to. The talks have started about a show.
Well, yeah, okay.
So listen, lots to get to. There is lots going on. We were just chatting there during the news because you heard Roberto Lopez on the show last night, who, well, his wish has been granted. If any podcast listeners heard him monitoring scores at that stage, he wasn't quite sure what the future held for him. The future held Sadio Mane.
Yeah, they're true. And they're true as a third place team, and without getting into the permutations of it, they have to face Senegal. Just the other potential options, those teams aren't going through. So they're playing Senegal next Tuesday, I think, in another city. So I would have been, because I've been working with him for the diary he's been doing with the Independent. So I was chatting to him earlier today, and I think at that stage, they sort of knew this was going to happen, unless there was mad results tonight, which didn't happen. So they're moving to another city to face Senegal next Tuesday. Senegal are ranked 20th in the world. They're a top ranked African team. Sadio Mane, Mendy from Chelsea in goals, Ismaila Sarr from Watford, Idrissa Gueye, quite a few other names, Koulibaly at Napoli. And they're a good side, although they have not played well in the competition so far. I mean, the competition has actually really improved over the last couple of days. I think a lot of people probably watched some of the earlier games and weren't too impressed by them, low scoring games. And with Ghana, Comoros last night, this tiny nation, Comoros, population of 800,000, beat Ghana last night. Ghana had a meltdown. It was 3-2. Brilliant game. It's starting to get good, but Senegal have completely stunk the place out in terms of the football they've played so far. They've played 3 games.
Welcome back. Manchester United 2-0 up away to Brentford, and Spurs have come back to beat Leicester 3-2. That is a result between Leicester and Spurs this evening. Dan McDonnell in studio. There is lots going on. I will just mention the Everton situation. I don't think we'll get into it tonight, but the current favourite for the job is Waza.
Well, he's doing an okay job at Derby at the moment in difficult circumstances, but I don't know.
Roberto Martinez is second favourite. It seems the issue for Martinez is that the Belgian FA are saying, we're not accepting you doing both jobs at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a World Cup year, so that seems to have cooled his interest. Frank Lampard will be interviewed by the club, according to the Telegraph.
Wow.
And then Nuno Espirito Santos 20-1. So really it's between Rooney and Lampard.
It does appear to be that way.
Two of the greats from that German defeat in South Africa all those years ago.
Oh,
Lampard
God.
robbed.
Oh yeah, is that the first Venn diagram crossover between them you would think of? I mean, possibly so.
I just see Gareth Barry being skinned by Mesut Ozil.
Yeah,
these are the images that flow back.
And Thomas Müller flying. Yeah, I was at that game. Yeah. It was Harry Redknapp was in the press box, because at the time there was a big thing over Redknapp maybe getting the job, and he got up with 10 minutes to go and sort of made a walk through the I don't know what, he was working for BBC or something. And he was obviously walking down. I thought it was a well-timed walk, because obviously, if you're writing your sort of colour piece at that stage, and it's like, there was one of our own walking down the steps at the end of the game here.
He couldn't bear to watch when he knew what he could have done.
A lot of Radio 5 lads, or a lot of the BBC radio broadcast, not the say presenters or the pundits, but maybe a lot of people doing the other shows, like daytime shows and stuff, they were all there in their vintage England gear, ready for this big game against Germany. They weren't happy. Completely turned over. But yeah, because that was the World Cup, where Rooney was shouting at the camera after the Algeria game.
Yeah, there was a lot going on
angry
with them off the field as well.
I think that was a miserable camp for all of them as well too. But
it was.
Yeah,
I hope he gets it. Just for it'd just be fascinating. I'm not itching to see Lampard have another go.
Seems to be. The only thing about Rooney is that it's a really tough situation at Derby at the moment, and Derby towards the end of last season in the Championship would have been following them a bit just because of the Irish players there, and they were a bit of a shambles, and they were very lucky to stay up. Just with even their management of certain situations and stuff wasn't great, but this season, in fairness, they've become a lot more solid with tight sort of financial situations. They've been eking out results. I watched them recently. I think it was against West Brom, was it? And he's done a good job, but you sort of feel and it's a bit like Lampard initially, who was learning at Derby and doing very well at Derby. It's that fine line, when do you jump? Because it's a tough one, because you can be pilloried when you do that jump and maybe it doesn't work out, but then at the same time, is this the perfect chance?
What you'd have to say about
judgment
Rooney
is everything with these things,
Sure, what you'd have to say about Rooney is around the game a long time, worked under some of the world's best managers, had the footballing intelligence to play a lot of different positions and the discipline to do so. And I would say as well, no exaggeration, I think his Sunday Times column when he was writing it was the best football column around in terms of insight, in terms of breaking down games or assessing players that everybody was talking about. He would come along and really convince you of his argument, really impress. It was kind of surprised me a touch, which in hindsight is silly because of the career he's had. But I thought, there was something there.
It was good. And listen, he obviously was working with someone on that, but I think that the insights were there.
The insights were his.
You can see that, and it was presented. Now, as I said, he's had one or two off the field things in the last year, which you think, just he has to, you go back to Everton, right? And there's something it's an emotional move as well as a career move. In Derby, he's doing his job and in very difficult circumstances, but his attachment there is to, sure, the players he's working with, but there's a degree of ambition. He's doing a job for that club, doing the best as an employee. You go to Everton and you're acting off different instincts and impulses to a degree, and you're back to Liverpool, and it's a sort of it's a potentially a fraught situation because there's a lot of unrest around the club, and you can see the massive appeal for going in initially straight away, and what a great story that would be, however many years it is on since his first goal, probably close to 20 now maybe. But at the same time, there's something to be said for maybe sticking with where he is. It's honestly, managers live and die by these decisions, and your stock is at a certain level, and maybe some people would say, actually no, just have the balls and go for it now. Like, take your opportunity when it comes. How can you turn it down? But it will be good, because there just seems to have been an evolution in his management even over the last year, which looks to be very trending upwards.
Speaking of Derby, because I want to talk to you about the Jamie McGrath situation, but Jason Knight there is still only 20 and has played 100 games for Derby, which is pretty impressive feat. So it seems a reported 16 clubs are interested in signing Jason Knight from Derby. Some Premier League clubs included. I've seen Everton and Wolves heavily linked, and Crystal Palace, Leicester, Leeds, Burnley, Newcastle, all not uninterested. So this is a 20-year-old Republic of Ireland player in high demand amongst Premier League clubs. Where's he going to go?
Oh, I don't know where he's going to go. I mean, I'm trying to sort of make inquiries with this, and I think there's been so many clubs linked that it's hard to sort of distill where it stands at the moment. Like, is there a definitive one? Because the Derby situation even has changed over the last week or so.
Will he go this month?
Well, the suggestion was he wasn't necessarily desperate to, but just with developments with Derby, that the plight looks grimmer, that they may have no option. You know, that it may have to happen, and it's not one where he's desperate to get out. You know?
£8 million territory.
Yeah, which, I mean, he'd be worth more than that for me, but obviously Derby are in no position to quibble. Like, you know, when you know, and that's it. Like, they're vulnerable at the moment. Like, there's another young Irish kid there as well, Festi Ebasele, who's doing really well there too. People, if they want to look back at the highlights of the weekend, this long bursting 60-yard run he made from one box to the other to make a goal against Sheffield United, really good. But yeah, no, Jason Knight he'll play in the Premier League eventually, I've no doubt about that. But you know, you have to be careful as well. Like, some of the clubs you mentioned again there are in relegation battles. You want it to be an upward progression for him wherever he does go, and go somewhere that's solid and Premier League stable. Marcus
Rashford has scored a goal. It's been, I think, 12 games, top of my head, since he scored one, and eventually he cracks a smile when McTominay says, "Come on." So Manchester United 3-0 up. Ralph Rangnick is on the bench and turns to Cristiano Ronaldo, whispers something into his ear, and suddenly everyone at Manchester United much happier.
I mean, that's added another layer to the evening. A Rashford goal.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was speaking openly there, Rangnick, so the lip readers will be onto that.
Yeah. Rashford, he was put in on the right hand side and finished pretty well, put it into the top right corner. Manchester United cruising at this stage. They've broken Brentford. It was McTominay who won the ball in midfield. That was the real thrust of the move, and then he galloped forward. See, there is something in McTominay for sure, and laid the ball off to Bruno, who laid it off to Rashford, and he finished first time. But McTominay, it was brilliant midfield play, you'd have to say, all round midfield play, won the ball well, and then good feet and good engine, and United 3-0 up. Jamie McGrath, I wanted to ask you about, Dan. Jamie McGrath we're familiar with. We had him on the show after he played against Portugal away, and it's in his mid-20s now. He's at St Mirren. He scored 17 odd goals, 10 penalties included in the 2021 season, and seems to have done really well over there. He's out of contract at the end of the year. St Mirren want to keep him at the club. If he signs the deal, he'll presumably become one of the better paid players at the club. However, naturally, other clubs are interested. Aberdeen are, not sure what the current situation is, interested. So it seems the discussions with Aberdeen have fallen through. Now, the Aberdeen manager, Stephen Glass, was asked why the move for Jamie McGrath did fall through.
All our targets that we want players, everybody we're looking at, we want players that want to come and play for Aberdeen, see the profile that we can give them, see what the club offers, and see a game like tomorrow night and think you want to be a part of it. I think there's a pressure to being an Aberdeen player that's not for everybody. So it's we'll get the right people in that can help us.
That's the Real Madrid manager, Stephen Glass there.
Do you remember Stephen Glass was... He was briefly the assistant manager of Shamrock Rovers. Who would you think was the manager of Shamrock Rovers at the time? Can I throw that at you?
Go on.
Stephen Kenny. He worked under Stephen Kenny when Kenny's ill-fated stint at Shamrock Rovers. Stephen Glass was there.
Do we think Jamie McGrath can't handle this?
Nah, it's rubbish.
Aberdeen?
It's absolute rubbish.
It's for real?
I just think that's absolute rubbish. Like, genuinely, like, you know, that's just garbage. I think what's happened here is, from my reading of it, I think the McGrath situation is an interesting one. Like, Aidan Fitzmaurice would have been reporting on it for us, you know, and other places have reported on it, like the other clubs that have come in, and it certainly tallies with stuff I would have heard, I suppose, over the last while. Like, to me, I was actually disappointed when I saw the reports crop up again that McGrath might be going for another club in Scotland, because I'd sort of heard, you know, that championship clubs were in for him and that's where he would be going. And I was surprised with the stories that, like, Aberdeen was really going to happen. And I'm sort of wondering, and this is me now, this is speculating more so, that I would doubt the extent to how far he really went down the road with Aberdeen. I think
because he was terrified.
Well, he was obviously scared of Aberdeen. I mean, having played for Ireland and Portugal and played in some big games over the last couple of months, I do not think the status of Aberdeen is something that's going to break down Jamie McGrath, and I doubt anyone who knows him. Now, maybe, I don't know. I think Jamie McGrath's I think in the last year, I think he's changed representation. Yeah. And of course, agents have to do their bit, and where they, I think, they might have been talking to Scottish clubs, but to me, certainly, my understanding of it was that there was decent championship interest.
Okay.
Birmingham was one of the ones that was mentioned. And to me, once that became a viable option, Jamie McGrath, it'd be crazy to move to another Scottish top flight. I mean, it's been a great platform for him, and he's done brilliantly well at St Mirren, and it's been great to see him thrive there.
Yeah.
But the age that he's at, if the opportunity to go to the Championship is there, I suspect that they've told Aberdeen, we're not going to you, and this is the jilted lovely reaction. I don't think Jamie McGrath, I can't do it because I don't fancy. I can't imagine playing in front of slightly more fans than I do at the moment.
Yeah.
It's more, he's going to go where the best move for him would be.
He's 25 years of age when you mention his age there, so there is a degree of now or never if he's going to take the plunge. Interestingly, his St Mirren manager Jim Goodwin didn't have him involved in the game against Dundee United on yesterday, and he said Jamie didn't feel his head was in the right place for the game tonight. A lot of speculation, it's been messing with his head, we'll need to get it resolved as soon as possible. So that certainly suggests he hasn't turned down Aberdeen because I want to stay at St Mirren and go nowhere. That suggests something's in motion.
I'd be shocked if he didn't move to England before the end of the month. And he was so close to joining Hibs before the window closed in August, it just fell through. I think you might have spoke to him about that.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I mean, maybe there's another Scottish club that's going to come in there, and maybe that might happen, but I would have thought England would be more likely.
Interesting story has broken this evening. The FA are looking into a yellow card which was shown to an Arsenal player, and the reason they're looking into it is bookmakers were in touch to flag suspicious betting patterns. So it happened this season. It's understood the bookmakers flagged the FA to an unusual amount of money placed on the Arsenal player being shown a yellow card during a Premier League game this season. The FA told The Athletic the FA is aware of the matter in question and looking into it. Multiple gambling industry insiders have told The Athletic that the pattern of betting surrounding the player being shown a yellow card during the match was highly unusual. So this would be a big story. A Premier League game, it's very easy to assume, well, Premier League players, they're all on enough money. No reason whatsoever to do this. Yeah. But I mean, there'll be if there's something amiss here, there will be a story which could be very, very significant. Now, the defender Bradley Wood, back in 2018, who played for Lincoln, they were on a good cup run, and he intentionally picked up yellow cards. He was banned for 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would have covered a lot of this stuff. Unfortunately, our old friends, the suspicious betting patterns has been was a considerable part of the Irish football landscape for, on and off over a number of years. And there would have been games and cases. And as a result, you probably would have gained a lot more knowledge about how this system would operate, like the memorandum of understandings that would exist between associations and bookmakers to alert them to patterns. Because
and sorry to interrupt, I would presume for something like yellow cards, this is not something that the majority of people bet on because it's just not a particularly interesting.
A lot of movement, and it wouldn't take much movement in a market to raise a red flag either. You wouldn't need to be.
A small amount would start to look suspicious.
Like there was, wasn't there stories back in the day of like games where the ball kicks off and it's booted out of play and what's going on, and there would be instances, and this whole thing of spot betting, definitely there would have been a lot of discussions around it in the, as you said, at English lower league level, not just that case you referenced. I think there was multiple, or certainly several other cases. I don't want to throw out names without being sure of them, but there was other cases that spring to mind for me, and all based along that lines of yellow cards or fouls or
first throw-in. Maybe
penalty concessions would be the upper end of it, in terms of something that would be very much like some of it. People would say, you see, that, well, is this really match fixing? It's more on the it's more on the kinder side of the equation. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I mean, it's not influencing the result. I mean, is it someone just doing whatever at whatever minute of the game that's an unthreatening sort of scenario for the integrity of the game? But of course, no arbiter, no sort of company can judge that. I mean, if you're deemed to have done anything like that, it's a very serious offence, and you are going to have the book thrown at you. Yeah.
Well, there's not a huge amount more we can say about it, but that was breaking news this evening. The Shamrock Rovers situation.
Yeah, so I would have reported this today. The League of Ireland season is coming back on February the 18th. Granted, I think a lot of the attention that night might be on St Pat's and Shells with Damien Duff and that game over in Tolka, which I think will be brilliant. But Shamrock Rovers are the defending champions, and they're due to play UCD in Tala. And I think, with Jack Byrne coming back, with the fact that I think over 7,000 at their last league game, you always have a great crowd the first league game of the season. It's been a long break, etc., etc. Like Nathan Murphy bringing his kids up there to Tala, everyone's got on board with it. But they're playing that first match, unless they can find some appeal route that'll be listened to, they're going to play behind closed doors, because people may have seen this back in November. Shamrock Rovers played down in Waterford, and there was basically a sort of a repeater firework sent from the crowd. I think it actually might have gone into the roof and ricocheted. But anyway, it ended up
What's a repeater firework?
I honestly don't know. I just know, I mean, the answer might be in the question. Repeater, it doesn't just have one spark in it. It's got a bit more.
Candles you blow out and light again.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I mean, if someone can clarify what it is. I just said it because
do you think it's
the technical term.
It's a bit silly. We still have fireworks are still illegal in Ireland, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's taking things in a different...
No, sorry, just an aside. I was just talking about this recently. I was talking about this at New Year's.
New Year's Eve. Well, I see...
Why don't... they're just readily available. It might be better if we just regulated it and just...
We live in a similar part of the woods, and there was the shows were going everywhere around that neck of the woods.
Oh, I thought we were at war.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, no.
Down the road, it was like, this is quite a serious situation.
Suddenly, a moment where you realise how many people have illegally got fireworks.
But to bring it back even to the point that, like, the pyrotechnic shows are very common at League of Ireland games, like hugely common, and bizarrely, like, you'll be heavily sanctioned for them, but it wouldn't be unusual to then find these crowd shots used in sort of official publication material to, like, sell the atmosphere of the... Like the Bows St Pat's Cup final.
Yeah.
Like, the stadium was enveloped in smoke for the first 10 minutes. And it was, I think, talking to people who wouldn't necessarily be regulars that went, they just thought it was an amazing occasion, right? So you used to be that. But this incident was, listen, there was...
Sorry, and we'll get into this. Yeah. And sorry, I would just say, like, ideally, they just wouldn't be around at all because terrible things happen to kids at Halloween.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
What I mean is the dodgy black market ones, which aren't regulated and blow up 10 seconds earlier than they're meant to. We move away from that, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I'm turning this into some kind of late night talk show.
I didn't realise you were such an avid pro fireworks man.
No, not.
Maybe you can do this in your show with Jackie
It was just at Halloween, the law-abiding citizen that I am. Or sorry,
when you're presenting the Today Show in the afternoon on some RTE Virgin Media hybrid.
It's just a New Year's. It's just a New Year's where suddenly it sounded like World War III had broken out. I was like, my God, how many people have fireworks here?
And your first, I mean, what are you becoming that your first thought was, this needs to be regulated as a market? I mean, what has happened to you?
It woke me up. I was like, what is going on?
Did you not stay up?
No, I'm joking. I did stay up.
Oh, God. Okay.
Although, not much beyond.
No. 12:05. You heard it from the top of the stairs.
Sorry, repeater firework.
But anyway, like this Waterford incident, and like we've even sort of been
this is serious.
Like Anthony Wordsworth, one of the Waterford players, was struck, needed a bit of treatment. I mean, and like if this had gone in the wrong direction, and to be fair, I think on the night, other Shamrock Rovers fans rooted out who was the culprits, and they were arrested, and sometimes clubs can be slow to condemn this stuff, you would say, but you would say they responded quickly enough. I think there was a few stupid tweets put out at the night, quips, but I think the following day they got on board with it. But I have to say, it deserved a really strong sanction and punishment, and you'd be expecting a big fine. I think at closed doors for your first home match of the following season, when this happened at an away game, it's a strong sanction. And I even see
it's a very expensive sanction.
Like, I mean, I don't know what figure you can put on it, but like generally that first night, you generally get a really good crowd, you know. And I know they have a lot of season ticket holders and stuff. But anyway, like you've seen, say, even officials from, say, Bows, their rivals, coming out saying this is quite harsh, because I think a lot of people in the league know almost there but for the grace of God stuff. I mean, there's been other instances over the last year that maybe weren't as eye-catching and as like this, just the pictures that in the images, this was just captured in such a way. But I mean, you know, you see stuff happening at games that I think people at other clubs would be like, yeah, you can't really legislate for one or two idiots just throwing something. And you'd like to think the culture exists that people around them wouldn't happen, and people would say, well, you know, into the whataboutery of, well, these clubs' fans have behaved in a particular way at different times, and this was overdue, and you'll hear a lot of that stuff, and you have the whataboutery. But I think as a precedent, and just to be clear, it was the FAI's, they have an independent disciplinary control unit who made this decision. So it wasn't like the FAI. They hand over this to a disciplinary panel who've made this ruling, which I think if it set a precedent, then if anything happens somewhere else this season, you'll have fans of other clubs saying, well, their next game at home should be behind closed doors and stuff. So I'm not sure. I actually think it's a bit harsh, while not also seeking to trivialise the event and what happened. You're just sitting there thinking about what we need to do about fireworks.
No. I agree with you on the seriousness of it. And
it has to be a deterrent.
You have to protect players. But as you said, it seems like a hell of an onus to put in the clubs to guarantee that every single person that comes through the turnstiles, not least in an away match when they're not even necessarily in charge of security, is going to not do something stupid. Because if we've known anything about football crowds, is that there's generally someone in there who might do something stupid. So I don't quite know what the appropriate punishment is, because it is very serious, and if a player was injured or could be injured, it has to be absolutely smacked down, you know, clamped down on. So I feel, on the one hand, I agree with you, it seems harsh, and yet what is the appropriate punishment?
I don't know, if you ban them from going to, say, a load of away games, you're actually, because they have one of the biggest away supports in the country, you're actually hitting other clubs in the pocket. So they're at home to UCD, you're looking at UCD, interesting, they're playing UCD the first home game of the season. You know, don't have many UCD fans complaining about missing their first game.
Yeah.
You can put your sort of hat on around this stuff and think, you know, is this sort of almost like a version of a compromise solution? But
you know, maybe it doesn't.
But I think
I've sympathy for the Rovers players, but maybe it does need really strong action.
I don't know, though.
Imagine this becomes a thing in our league.
But it has been a thing to a degree where like stuff gets chucked on.
What kind of stuff?
But like you've seen, like, going down that road. But I mean, there was footage of another goal in another game recently where I don't know what was thrown on when players were celebrating. Was it a firework or something?
Flare.
Yeah, I've seen, like, you see flares chucked onto the pitch. I've been at several games in the last season where the game has been halted to take something off the pitch. You know, one or two games spring to mind where, like, I think one group, like, fans chucked something on, and the closest player to it was their own player. You know, it's just like. Like, I don't know. It's true. Sometimes you can lash a decision, but then you say, okay, well, what should the sanction have been then? Yeah. You know, and
because you could fine Rovers, but that's not going to make a headline. It's not going to register with the fans.
No. And look, it's definitely registered, and it will if the season starts on February 18th with an empty stadium for them in the first game.
You see what
that does register, but
what it does is it will provoke a social pressure. As in, if I am the idiot that's thinking about throwing a flare in amongst my fellow fans, and they know this is going to result in us being banned from the stadium next week, I'll think twice.
Yeah, but I guess the presumption there is that the people who do it are like fully engaged, sort of like thinking that way, like, or is it more just
cause trouble
and an impromptu act that doesn't like the suggestion there is almost that it's some kind of like deep hardcore fan who just had a moment of madness.
Sure.
Whereas like what, you know, you sort of have the elements that attach. But I mean,
no, I'm presuming the motivation.
There's a lot of different views on it, but I'd imagine this one will rumble on a bit in terms.
Are Rovers appealing?
I gather, and I wasn't aware of this when I filed it initially, but they have already tried and got nowhere with an initial one. But I think they're going to consider other options and see what they can do. But I'm not sure what their avenues will be at this stage. I'm not so sure.
Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. Our football show was brought to you by Sky. You can watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. It has just gone full time at the Brentford Community Stadium. A 3-1 win for Manchester United. There was a late consolation there for Brentford. We'll take a short break.